Hi, I'm Daryl Urbanski, and welcome to the Best Business Podcast. My mission is to help create 200 new multi-millionaire business owners. How? You'll do better when you know better. In my interviews, you'll hear from self-made millionaires, seven-figure business owners, authors, and world-class experts sharing how they did it so you can too without experiencing the same obstacles they did. Now, if you like this interview, please share it with a friend you think will benefit. They'll appreciate it, and I will as well. You can also connect with me on social media. Look for Daryl Urbanski, D-A-R-Y-L, Urbanski, U-R-B-A-N-S-K-I, and add me so we can be friends. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy what I've prepared for you right here, right now. Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. My name is Daryl Urbanski, your host as always, and today our guest is Adam Urbanski. And yes, you heard the last name right, and no, we are not related. Adam is a man whose shadow I've been following at events for years. I even had a client who called me Adam for the first few weeks simply because our last name is the same. We have a lot of, it's true, we have a lot of mutual friends who tell me amazing things about him. And Adam, we've talked a little bit, and I've only met him once, and it was a brief handshake many years ago at Infusionsoft's annual conference. But I've asked Adam to be here today, one, out of personal self-interest, because I would love to know more about him. But second, because starting with only $194 and a limited knowledge of English, Adam built a multi-million-dollar restaurant business in less than 10 years. Now people call him the Millionaire Marketing Mentor. He's called that by entrepreneurs worldwide, and he's coached over 30,000 business owners, teaching them effective and affordable business development strategies through his new company, the Marketing Mentors. And the Marketing Mentors provides a variety of popular distance learning and marketing training programs, which includes Attract Clients Like Crazy, Overnight Authority Event, From Contacts to Contracts, Info Profit Success, and Secrets of Master Networkers. But most importantly, Adam's clients and students generate millions of dollars in extra income each year because they follow his advice. So Adam, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you being here. How are you today, my friend?
I'm great, Daryl, and it's my pleasure being here. And I've got to tell you, it's fantastic to do an interview with an interviewer who knows how to pronounce my last name.
I know, right? Urbanski, Urbanski, like you get all these weird things.
I came up with a shortcut. So just say Urbanski.
Yeah.
Urbanski. There we go. That would do. But anyway, pleasure being here. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, no, me too. And so now you're actually in Urbanski. I was adopted into the name, but you're from Poland and all that, right? Like, what's the background? Is it a really popular name in Poland? I mean, I know in Canada where I grew up, there was only one other Urbanski, and they were in Toronto, and like that was it for the entire province of Ontario. Just two of us.
Well, I didn't know any other Urbanskis except for my own family growing up in Poland. And I've run into a few here in Southern California, and just I think recently I'm becoming more aware. It's like Urbanskis are popping up everywhere. I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Somehow this name got more popular than it used to be. But no, it's not a very common name, but it's not like the least common as well.
Got it. Yeah, well, I love every Urbanski I've met so far. So, so. Maybe can you tell us a little bit about like how did you get started? Why did you come to America? Like you didn't know very much English. You started a restaurant. Like how did all that come about? How did you get going?
Man, all such great questions, and I wish we had like a weekend seminar to just kind of dive into some of the stories because there's so much that I think most people can learn just from kind of my own little process. But, I always tell people I was young and stupid when I came to the United States. The young part is fading away. The stupid part is pretty stubborn and sticks around. But, it's kind of like this typical – well, so I came in '89, which was pretty much just around the time when the Berlin Wall was coming down and the Polish communist government was being abolished, and we had first really truly democratic elections and so on. So I really was escaping from this no opportunity type land and mentality where I thought I've got to go elsewhere to really kind of make my own way. And I think another big thing that at the time Poland had 3-year mandatory military service, and even though it was Polish army, it was pretty much largely run by our friends from the east, which is Russia. So it just wasn't, and me being very entrepreneurial from the very early age, I could not see myself being under someone else's heel as a soldier, and God bless the people that can do it and have, and are built for that. I just thought, 3 years in that, it's just no way in hell I can make that. I can survive that.
Right.
And really, by a lot of miracles, I got out, got to the United States. Again, lots of stories in there, and came with $194. The only thing I could say is, how do you do? And excuse me, do you have the time? And if someone answered there, my eyes were like big saucers, and I had no idea what they were saying back then. It's like, just nod and pretend you understand, right?
I know exactly what it feels like. And the worst part is when you say that stuff, or you do have a follow-up sentence or two that you say really well, and people just assume that you know so much more. That was me in Japan. Like, I had some few sentences, and then they thought I knew Japanese, and you're just like smiling, nodding.
Yeah. So, and again, I was a high school graduate. I had no skills. So it was pretty much kind of, survival of the fittest, so to speak. It's like if I didn't kill something, so to speak, I didn't get to eat. And by kill, I don't mean like physically go and murder someone,
of course,
but, do something that
to get paid.
Generates revenue.
Right.
So, and it took me about 90 days to kind of find my 3 to 4 months to kind of find my bearings and start figuring things out. But, I got to tell you, like, one thing that I did is I had this lady that took me in, and I took her cordless drill, Makita drill, and I went and purchased peepholes. It was in Queens, New York, so this is this is like the year 1990. And I don't speak English, so I had a card written. I'll tell you what was on the card in a moment, but I had this Makita drill, and I went to a local hardware store, whatever it was, and I bought a handful of those little peepholes things you put in the door, and they were like, I don't know, 25, 50, 75 cents. I forget what but they were like, totally inexpensive, right? Back then. I don't know what they cost now, but they were just like under $1. And then I would go door to door, knock on the door. When I rang a bell and knock on the door, I would step back, and I would just let people, when they open, I'll let them see the card. And the card basically say, hey, I'm new to the neighborhood. I don't speak English very well, but I'm really handy with the drill, and I can install a peephole and make your home a lot safer. Would be willing to invest $5 and 5 minutes of your time and allow me to install a peephole? I mean, it's all that they said on the card in a pretty large font. So I would like stick a card in the hand and allow them to read. And some people slammed and give me the card back and slammed the door back in my my face. And some people allowed me to do that, which really was a 5-minute process. I would just like measure a couple of things and drill through, put that thing through, pop it together, and that's it. And man, that's like I didn't even think about it until years later. That this is how I turned 50 cents into $5.
Yeah,
multiple times a day, and I had really no other skills other than just knowing how to drill a hole with a drill and put that thing through. So that's kind of the first thing, and I always look. So one of the things that got me ahead that I want to share with people is that you cannot. It's very entrepreneurial. People who come to being an entrepreneur through academic background and corporate background, which is pretty much nearly everyone. Mm-hmm. And they have parents who grow up in the same structure, in corporate structure and academic structure. They always wait for someone else to give them permission to either do something or call themselves something. Mm-hmm. And from the very, I had no skills. I had no title. I had no education, so I couldn't rely on this. So I basically had to go and claim to be something or someone and just prove that I am it. Yep. So my parents, I grew up in a bakery. My parents had a bakery. Now, I was not a baker. Many times, in growing in one of the very few privately owned businesses in the communist Poland, I would be frequently woken up in the middle of the night because an employee didn't show up or whatever, and I would have to step in just as part of a team to do whatever I was able to do. It's like sweep the floors, handle this, push this away. But I had somewhat of an orientation around the bakery. So guess what I did? I went from bakery to bakery, and I told people I'm a baker. I'm looking for a job. And, man, so finally some guy, 3 months into the search had mercy on me. Jewish, Hungarian Jews, Russian, Jewish, Hungarian kind of thing. And they took me, and I spoke Russian, obviously, growing up in Poland. So they found me in like 4 o'clock in the morning one day and said, hey, you've got a job. Obviously, someone else didn't show up, so my lucky break. Mm-hmm. Man, it didn't take much for this guy to figure out that I'm not a baker. It probably took him the first, 20 minutes to realize I had no idea what I was doing. But man, I worked my ass off, and guess what? By the time I showed up the next morning, I was a fully fledged baker. I knew exactly what to do
Yep.
because not learning that quickly was not an option.
Mm.
And that's kind of how I've lived a lot of my entrepreneurial things. It's like I would basically claim something and then go through rapid training and learning mode and go like, I better live up to that label or I'm completely screwed. But had I waited for something, I would think, well, I've got to go to school, maybe read books, I've got to get some training, some certifications, and meanwhile, I would have starved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
I agree wholeheartedly. Jim Rohn has a great quote where he says, formal education will make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune. And, and that's so real because I don't know what the last couple of years it's been, but I remember reading, it was a McLean Canadian magazine, they were saying the top 10 in-demand jobs in 2012 didn't exist, or in 2013 didn't exist in 2012. And the world that we're in, it's changing so fast. How do you, right? How is formal I mean, a lot of kids, they come out of university and college, and the education they got is obsolete because of some new development, And so,
yeah.
I mean, at the time, it might have sounded backwards, but I think that's a really good, I don't know, I think that's a really good way, and it's obviously served you very, very well in your life and in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's funny that you mentioned about jobs that didn't exist and are top-paying jobs today. Social media is one thing that comes to mind. Think about people that deal with podcasts today. I mean, podcasts didn't exist a few years ago.
Yep.
Think about, we both use a company called Infusionsoft, and how many Infusionsoft experts you have today. And again, a few years ago, that didn't even exist.
Yep.
And I think about my kids. I've got two daughters. They're both in college, and they both kind of study business and entrepreneurial topics. But I'm thinking, they graduate, and I don't necessarily know if the school is equipping them for anything that they will encounter in real life. But there are a couple of things that come to mind. Is Wayne Gretzky said that the reason he was such a winning player is because he would always skate to the puck was going, not where the puck is. Right? So it's a great quote. But what I'm going to combine it with another saying, and it's something that I sort of intuitively arrived at. But my daughter's high school water polo coach, one of the exercises he had them do is kind of think about where the ball is in the pool and how to be always aware of what's going on. And the skill he was teaching them was situational awareness. Like, you can't just be a solo player in a pool amongst other players. You have to be there, and you realize you're part of the entire pool. So even though you swimming with the ball and whatever you are, whatever you're doing at the moment, you've got to be aware where the rest of your teammates are, where the opponents are. You've got to be aware of the entire pool. Because if you don't, you're going to get crushed. You're going to get, your ball is going to be taken away from you. You're going to be blocked. You've got to be aware of the whole thing. And I think it's the same for all the sports, all the team sports and games. But where I'm heading with it in business, it's the same thing. You've got to have this situational awareness of what's going on in your marketplace, what's needed. What are your potential customers or ideal customers looking for? What are your competitors preparing or doing right now? What's missing? And again, where the puck is and where the puck is going. And if you've got that awareness, you can always get ahead and do well for yourself.
Yeah, that's great. You looked up that quote for me, didn't you? Because it's Canadian.
As I started saying as I thought about it, but no, I didn't. It's such a good quote.
It is a good quote.
And it's such frequently used quote,
Yep. Yeah,
but here's another thing that I've got to tell you, kind of my unique ability is taking quotes or things that people take for granted and giving them a different meaning. So we always hear things, and we kind of go like, yeah, that's so smart, I've heard it, it's all right. But very few people actually stop and think about it. If you really know that quote, do you know what the heck it means for you in your life? How would you actually apply it? So just this thing, where the puck is and where the puck is going. So for our listeners, think about where you are in your life right now, whether it's relationship, money, career, business. Think about what does that mean, and are you where the puck is, or are you heading where the puck is going? Because if you are where the puck is right now, you're going to be obsolete in the next 12 to 36 months.
No, you're right. That's a great thing, and definitely for those people that are listening, they should definitely think about that. And what area is most important to them, as far as like what's the most critical thing that in their jobs or their careers or their business, and what's the evolution of that? because that's so many people. I mean, look at what happened to newspapers, right? They weren't
Yep.
they forgot the problem that they were actually solving, and they weren't paying attention to where the puck was going, and they got wiped. Music, that's another one, just
Yep.
decimated. And
Yep.
so that's real. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is pain, and it's suffering, and it's torture. So no, that's really, really huge. Adam, that's great knowledge. What were some of the biggest challenges for you then? I mean, obviously those were some when you first got started, but now you're a baker and you're getting into business. I mean, you obviously didn't wake up a millionaire maker. So what were some of the biggest challenges for you on your path?
I mean, aside from not speaking the language and not having the money, not having any kind of connections or education, aside from those minor things, I think I had a one major challenge, and I was lazy and I wanted to be rich. And that's kind of that's a little bit difficult, but I think it's also a blessing, because I think in a nutshell, the best entrepreneurs are kind of lazy. And I don't mean lazy like they don't want to work, but we're always looking for a better way to accomplish something, which drives us to create new solutions.
Yep.
So, that always, so I kept searching, like, how can I get, farther ahead faster? And obviously it became painfully clear that working for someone else, that's not going to be a way to do that. So I started looking for either ways to be employed in a different structure where I got a bigger piece of the pie, as my compensation, or just downright own my own things. And now as I'm going down this pathway, I totally forgot what was the question that you asked me.
Just your biggest challenges, your biggest obstacles on your path to becoming a millionaire maker.
When I really think about this question, Daryl, I think a couple of things. Number one, that I don't even think I have come across my biggest challenge yet. I always think that I'm always thinking. I'm being very optimistic. I call myself the optimistic realist. I always expect the best outcomes, but I'm always thinking about the worst case solutions. So I think that it's very easy when you achieve certain level of success to kind of get lulled into complacency. So I'm always thinking that, there's something that I'm always thinking, there will be a time where I least expected that the rug will be pulled from underneath me. And again, I better be ready. So that's one. And the second thing, in terms of the greatest challenge in how I've overcome it, I think my greatest challenge is actually myself and my way of thinking. And there is no way to overcome it once. The only way to overcome it is to continually work on it. And just, again, to put it kind of in practical terms, for people that, I bet you have a lot of listeners who are entrepreneurs, right, who run their own businesses. So I think in terms of like my own journey, starting my own coaching, consulting, information marketing business, well, the first thing when I started the business, I needed to figure out how to name the business, right? But once I got it named, then the biggest problem was, how do I get clients? That was the biggest problem. And so I got to solve this problem. Now, once I solved this problem, then another problem occurred, which was, how do I continue to get clients without working with existing clients all the time? And then the next problem occurred, which was, okay, I've got to bring somebody on board to help me. So now I've got to gain skills of interviewing people and hiring people. And now once that gets to a certain level, then you've got to realize, well, now you've got to have some systems in place and managing those people. So, again, learning different skill sets. And now you've got a few people working for you. You have to realize, okay, well, in order for that to work, I've got to become not just a provider and a marketer. I've got to become a visionary and a leader for my little tribe here. So that's another skill, right? And it never ends. The skills that you've got have gotten you exactly to where you are right now. And if you want to go an inch farther, the skills that you currently have are already either downright, at least obsolete, and in the worst case scenario, they're downright preventing you to the next step. So if you become the best technician, the best at doing what you want to do, it will probably help you get to a certain level. But that beyond that level, if you want to grow to the next, so it may take you to, let's say, $100,000 a year business. But if you want to get this to $1 million a year business, the fact that you are the best technicians is likely what's tripping you up from going to the $1 million level, because you're going to be clinging on to doing certain tasks That's okay at $100,000, but a complete no-no at the $1 million level.
Yep, I love that.
So, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Keep going. That's such a great point because that's Einstein said. Like I forget his quote, but it's like you can't solve the problems that we created with our current level of thinking can't be solved by the level of thinking we have. It's I butchered that quote, but it's exactly what you're talking about. The skill set you got that got you where you were. Yeah, it won't. That's as far as it's going to get you. So.
Yeah, and I love that quote. And again, to kind of circle back to what I shared earlier, which is I love to take quotes and make them practical. So let's think about that quote, right? So basically what Einstein says is that you cannot solve a problem with the same level of awareness of thinking that created the problem in the first place.
Right.
So to give you an idea, let's say we take, again, a person who maybe runs a business, right? Let's say I deal with a lot of service professionals. So let's say we take, a coach, a consultant, an attorney, and they've started the business and they got themselves to like the first $50,000, and then they realize, in order for me to grow the business, I really should be doing more marketing online. I've got to become better in marketing online. Now, here's the thing. Most of them will go in there and study for months about building a website, a better website, and they'll start looking for systems and solutions and start learning themselves how to do it. And the reason for it is they're thinking at a $50,000 income. So for them to invest, let's say $5,000 in the website, it's like, oh my God, unthinkable. I don't even have it.
Right.
And I say, okay, so think about how long does it take someone at $50,000 thinking to solve a website problem? And it can be anywhere from 90 days to years there. And you've seen it where people kind of know what needs to be done, but they won't move for years. Mm-hmm. Now, what I'm asking people to do is think about if your business was 10 times bigger at $500,000, how would you solve your website problem? Right. And how long would it take? And typically the answer is anywhere from 3 hours to 3 days at the most. Mm-hmm. 3 weeks may be on an outstretch. Because you would just write a check and to give it to someone and say, "Go do it. I want it done." And you've got 3 days to do it.
Right. Right.
You wouldn't invest, 3 months or 3 years, but because your thinking is different. Think about yourself, as a CEO of a $500 company, and then again, once you get to $500,000 a year, you want to start thinking, okay, whatever problem I'm experiencing right now, I am only seeing limited solutions from my vantage point. Now, let me just kind of close my eyes and envision that I run a $5 million enterprise. How would I address this problem? And the solutions will be completely different. So the key to highlight here is not that you want to create or engage in solutions and activities that are beyond your means. That's not what I'm saying. But you want to engage in activities that are driven by 10 times thinking, by the thinking of, you have to be thinking and taking action from where you want to be, not from where you are.
Right. Yeah, I've heard somebody said, it was Tony Robbins quote or something, it was, what would you do to solve this problem if you had the answer? And just ask yourself that question, well, if I had the answer, I would do that. And yeah, and it's so funny because a lot of times the answer is already in people. Like what you just said, a lot of people, they're sitting there already, like they just don't even you know what I mean? Like they don't even recognize that they're in their own way of the success that they want.
Yep.
That's awesome. That's so awesome.
And again, it's so easy to dish it out as a lesson. It's a lot harder to practice because we get stuck in our own way and we kind of think that our problem is so unique and so difficult, there is no solution. But if we just take the time and just quiet ourselves and go, okay, if I were in a different place, if I were to, I'm at the 5 feet level, if I were to elevate myself to 40 feet level, what would I actually see? I love this video circulating on the internet, which starts with, like a planet Earth, and then it goes farther and farther and farther and shows like the infinite number of galaxies that exist, and pretty much, Earth disappears, like, by the time they get to even our galaxy, it's impossible to see it. And I think it's the same thing in our problems because we're so right up against them. A lot of the times they appear so huge and unsurmountable. But if you just gain some distance and perspective, you start realizing it's not even a problem at all. It's actually maybe even an opportunity.
Right. Right, and that's in fact in a lot of problems and a lot of challenges there, that is the opportunity. I mean, that's where some of the biggest breakthroughs come through in business is by being able to turn something that's either pulling you down or preventing you into something that will uplift you and push you forward. I mean, anyone listening to this call, if they think about that, what if your biggest problem was your part of your solution? What would that look like? Right? Because I think that that's exactly what we talked about before. If like that lateral thinking, that ability to look at some things outside the box, that's the problem. Again, talking about what you mentioned before, when people come out of school, they've been trained to think a certain way, and that's not necessarily the right way to solve a problem. If your only tool is a hammer, then every problem looks like a nail, and that might not be it. And humans, we're capable of so much more. We're so adaptable. We're so smart. I mean, we managed to step outside the food chain. Like, people don't even recognize that. Like, we got out of the food chain. Like, that's not our problem anymore. Like, you know what I mean? I saw a great stand-up skit. Louis C.K. He's like, for every other creature on the planet, their lives end with screaming and pain as something eats their stomach. You know, but like we solved that problem. We're like, no, we don't want that problem. And so we're just so capable. But a lot of people, again, they're almost afraid to look stupid or to brainstorm or to ask for help or, like you said, to write the check to get the person that you think has the answer to come in and solve it because they're stuck in protecting kind of what they have or, you know, where they're at. There's a great video Steve Jobs posted where he's like, you know, a lot of people, they think that the world is something they're supposed to live inside, you know, and they're supposed to not bump into the walls or anything too much, just kind of stay single file and just kind of get through life. But he's like, but when you realize that life is like this malleable thing that you can push in on one end and something will poke out on the other, suddenly if you can just live life a bit more like a child and be a bit more playful with it, suddenly, right? Like, I mean, you even, before the call, we even talked about that. You and I were talking about, like, you know, once you achieve certain levels financially and how that empowers you to do some of your best work because now there's no fear of scarcity involved in it at all. And it's purely creative and fun. And you know what I mean? And and how that changes things. And if you can just pull that from wherever you are, if anyone's listening to this call and they're going through a tough time, I mean, just try to, as hard as it might be, try to step away from the fear and the scarcity and that, and just try to approach it from a purely, like from a perspective of mastery. If I wanted to be masterful in doing this, how would I do it? You know, and that might provide some clarity. So. Wow. So Adam, so what were some of the, like, I guess you've given some great advice for people that are starting out and struggling. Are there, like, do you have any favorite books or anything that you felt really helped you and that, I don't know, that, like, what's on your shelf?
Man, it's funny because I knew you would ask that, so I was kind of scanning my bookshop thinking, what books would I mention? And, you know, it's like it changes all the time. You can always go back to a few classics, but I think there are a couple of books that I would mention to people. You know, I really believe that whatever we undertake, 95% of the foundation that decides whether or not we will succeed or fail is really our thinking, right? So the book that comes to mind is The Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. And it's just such an old book, and I don't think that should be like a required reading for people because it really starts giving different perspective on this, you know, inner thinking and outside reality, and the pliability of our brains and how we can start shifting our thinking and just make ourselves more successful by changing our thinking. And you know, it's a little bit different than the Think and Grow Rich. It's just a little bit more scientific and a little bit more maybe practical, maybe not quite as good of a story to read, but just such good material. And the second book that I came across about a 2 years ago, I think, that I now tell a lot of people to go and read because one of the first skills as entrepreneur that people have to master that most folks by misinformation and erroneous thinking are very allergic to is the skill of selling and persuasion. Right? It's like if you don't know how to sell, if you don't know how to persuade, if you don't know how to influence, then you pretty much are going to starve. Right? You're going to be working. This is kind of what holds people. What I think creates so much failure for entrepreneurs is they are great technicians. They're really good at doing something, and then they think, well, let me just go and strike out on my own and do it. I can do it so much better than the people that employ me, and I get to keep all the money, blah, blah, blah. This kind of typical thinking. But what they don't realize is that they just they know how to do something. But what they don't know is why people want it done, which is the information that the people that employ them have. And that's why they're being an employee versus an owner. So the book that kind of really put it in a nice story and a very good structure to learning how to sell and changing the relationship with selling is a book by Harry Brown. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name the right way. It's Browne.
Right.
And the title is The Secret of Selling Anything. The Secret of Selling Anything. And, one lesson just to kind of share with folks is the big takeaway I've got, and I now have my team read this book, especially folks who are kind of involved in selling, is that he basically replaces the word profit with the word happiness. And everything is about exchange that gives us more happiness. And, we really get that through our thick skulls, that it's not about trying to manipulate someone into doing something they don't want to do,
right,
but it's about presenting opportunity for them to gain more happiness
right,
through whatever, right? And everybody's definition of happiness is different, and everybody's pathway to happiness is different. So that just completely changes everything and allows, I think it's a fantastic platform foundation to start looking at prospects in a different way, start tapping into their way of thinking, understanding what they buy, and start to present our offers in a different way, in a way that's more conducive to them to see it as a pathway to more happiness rather than just, a way to spend some money.
I love how you said that, because I've had a theory for a while that exactly like you said, the what impedes people from being able to be persuasive, and even like I suffer from this too. It's not like I'm cured of everything, but I think sometimes people get too caught up in themselves, and it's almost like a feeling of self-worth, right? Where they're not thinking about the other person at all. Like exactly like you said, they're not thinking about the other person and their happiness. Dan Kennedy, a mutual mentor of ours, has a great example, I think, in one of his books. I forget which one, but he talks about, someone goes to deliver a package and he goes to get the express, and the clerk talks him out of paying the extra for the express to save a couple of dollars, by sending it the other way. But the package that the guy has, like, he doesn't care about the cost. What he cares about is how fast it gets there. You know what I mean? But the other guy, he's from his perspective, and, he's not in a rush to get the package anywhere, and so it's like, it's almost doing business where we have to be selfless. We have to get out of our own way. When you're talking with someone, it's about them and their happiness. And it's not, and that's, I think, where it comes, people feel guilty asking for anything for themselves, but it's not. If it's about helping the other person, and I think that's, we're trying to shed this old school thinking of like selling ice to Eskimos, right? And that's a great book. When you said that, I have it, and I'm going to go reread it, because it's such a great book. It was, what's the title again? It's How to Sell Anything, and it's Harry Brown, Browne. Was that right?
The Secret of Selling Anything.
That's it, The Secret.
The Secret of Selling Anything, and it's by Harry, Browne.
Yeah, that's a great book. In fact, Gary Bencivenga, one of the greatest copywriters of all time, he raves about that book. So that's a must-read for everyone that listens. If you don't know who Gary Bencivenga is, just please trust me that man is just extremely gifted at persuasion and sales, and he just loves that book. So that's an awesome recommendation. Good job, Adam. Thank you. So what's been kind of the biggest mistakes that you've made? We talked about your challenges, talked about your progression. What were some of the biggest things that you, like, we could call them lessons or challenges, but what were some of the things that you didn't realize that you'd done that you're like, oh, I should have done it this way and not that way?
I think the biggest lesson, I'm trying to think what to bring up, because there's just so many different things that I could talk about.
Yeah, I know. There's a great quote I have. I forget what it is, but it's like, success is like I'm not going to say it, but it's like, success is like pregnancy. Everyone congratulates you, but nobody knows how many times you got screwed to get there. I love that quote,
so
because
funny.
That's right. It's like what success has many fathers, but failure is an orphan, right? Like nobody wants to put their hand. Yeah, that's mine. Yep, I messed up. That's mine, right? but it's just true, and you got to get through it. It's all the missed shots at the net that you need to be able to get that, be able to hit the basket. So, anyways,
that's so funny. I think that, and I'm thinking if I should mention this because I think I'm largely cured of that problem, but I, at least in my level of awareness, I'm sure it exists kind of at the next level, right? Mm-hmm. But it's really not reaching out for help fast enough.
Oh, that's such a good one.
And I am so like one of my advantages over other people is that I'm an extremely fast learner. And that's just a beautiful skill to have. I can look at something and pretty much moments later I'm a master at it. But one of my biggest problems and things that trip me up is that I'm an extremely fast learner.
Right.
Because that gives me creates this illusion that I don't need support, that I can figure it out. I'm smart enough, I should be able to figure it out. I can look at someone else's doing and I'll figure it out.
Right. It gives you permission to not ask for help.
Yeah, it's such a cocky way of thinking, and what it might manifest itself like is I'll end up, listening to people's programs or teleseminars or webinars and say, I can reverse engineer what they're doing. It's just like, well, yeah, maybe. Let's say that I could, but it's, I can only reverse engineer what it is that I see.
Right.
I cannot reverse engineer what I don't see, which is typically the stuff that actually makes it work, that at my level of awareness, I don't see it, so I can't reverse engineer it. So I end up, I often talk about this, I used to actually talk about this comparison. So let's say that you want to have a Ferrari. And you go like, great, you know what, but I'm kind of on a budget, so I'm going to build my own. And, I'm pretty handy. I've got a garage that's pretty well equipped. So what I'm going to do is go to a Ferrari store, and I'm going to look at a Ferrari, exactly the one that I want, and just kind of really, and every time I come across a Ferrari, I'm going to see it, I'm going to look, I'm going to observe. And, let's say that you're pretty handy and you end up creating a Ferrari in your garage. And it actually looks pretty darn good. It's like to an untrained eye, it looks nearly identical, like the one that came from the manufacturing plant, from the original thing. And then there's only one problem. You get into this car and you want to drive it, and it doesn't go anywhere. And you kind of go, what the hell happened? Well, what the hell happened is you never got to look at the engine. You only saw the outside. You built a fantastic replica, but you forgot to build the engine that drives it because you were not aware of what actually makes this car work.
Yep.
And that's only visible from the insider's perspective. So, again, to make it practical, I see people all the time. They go like, I see this person go, okay, they have a Facebook ad, and then they have a Facebook, then they have a webinar, and then they have an application page for coaching. I can replicate this.
Yep.
Well, good luck.
Yep.
All right, you can see the outside of the car, an ad, a webinar, and an application page. That's the outside of the car. What you don't know is the whole engine that drives it. Do you actually know what makes the ad work? Do you know what makes that webinar, first the opt-in page and then the actual webinar, do you know what actually makes it work?
Right.
You have no idea.
Right.
Now, you can have an application. You can have people fill out an application page. Do you actually know what makes that conversation work to result in the outcome that you're actually going for? So my mistake was in the past not going out there and not doing a couple of things. Number one, trying to jerry-rig a process. So if there was a tool, but the tool was, let's say $50 a month, I'd go like, screw it, I can build my own. Well, that's a, $50,000 versus $5 million thinking.
Yep.
So now it takes me 90 days to do this thing where I could have had it done in 3 hours.
Yep.
It's like, what the hell was I thinking, right? Yep. Was it worth saving the money? So now when I see a solution that I can push a button and get it done, I'm like, okay, done, that's it.
Yeah.
I don't care what it costs. It's still exponentially cheaper than me trying to figure out on my own and, and build it on my own and then put the time into this. And the second thing is, when I want to get something done, I'm looking, okay, who is already doing it successfully that I know of, that I can get proof that it's done, that they're doing it 10 times better than I am. And reaching out and saying, look, how are you doing this? So here's what I'm doing. How can I infuse some of what you've learned into what I'm doing to expedite the results? So, and it's a tough lesson because sometimes especially the farther you grow your business. I'm going to actually share with you a super powerful lesson. I just gained from one of those interviews that I re-listened to. We talked about it before the call. Interviews that I did a decade ago. I'm now re-listening to them, going like, "My God, this is such brilliance!" That if we made an arrangement, Daryl, and I said, "Look, if you give me $1, I will give you $5. How fast would you give me $1?"
Right. Oh, super fast.
Super fast.
Super fast.
But now if I said, look, if you give me $100,000, I'll give you $500,000. How fast would you do that?
Right. Well, that depends on your certainty of the outcome. Yep.
It's how come you didn't ask about a certainty of the outcome of the dollar investment? It was the same arrangement, 5-to-1 return on your investment. But you see, what happens is our relationship with money and the dollar amounts, as the dollar amounts increases at the perceived risk, actually the risk was exactly the same.
Yep.
You could have lost all your money, could have lost $1, but it's perceived as a greater risk because of the greater dollar amount involved, and we start tripping up. So I'll give you a story that this is actually about 8 years ago. I was in the mastermind group, and I was working on this project, and I came like second quarter in a row. I came to my group and I said, I'm struggling with it. I can't get it working. And I said, well, is there someone who can help you out with that? And I said, well, yeah, but this dude wants like $25,000. And I kid you not, like in unison, it took the three people that were in my group, it took them less than an eye blink. And they looked at me and said, so? And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, duh. Because the question, I kind of like, what do you mean? So I said, well, if you give them $25,000, how much do you stand to gain? I'm like, well, probably at least $100,000. And they said, okay, so what's the problem? It actually ended up being a $330,000 return in the first 12 months on a $25,000 investment. So huge. But I was tripping up. If the investment was a product for $25, I would have bought it.
Right.
But because it was $25,000, I was tripping up. I was like, oh my God, it's so expensive. It's like, blah blah blah. Where do I get the money and so on?
Yep.
So that's the problem. And I want to show you today because a lot of what I do is high-end coaching, consulting, and I teach others how to sell high-end products. And one thing that people don't realize that the price that you get to charge for what you do has less to do with you, your methodology, the quality of what you do, and nearly everything to do with the prospective client's potential for gains. So if I wanted to sell a $100,000 consulting gig to a company that makes I don't know, to a solopreneur that makes $50,000 a year, even if I tripled the business, they're still only making $150,000, which, is fantastic, right? At least they paid for the investment, but it's still not a lot of money. But if I now work with a company that makes $1 million a year at least, and I can double the business to $2 million, they'll gladly give me my $100,000 because it's just a percentage of what I just brought in.
Right.
Because their potential for gains was so much bigger. And so it's such an important lesson because it has everything to do with talking to the right potential clients.
Yep. That's such a good point, and that's something that really speaks to me because I applied the same things that it was the exact same thing. We talked again about the call. I had a martial arts school. I grew it to 6 figures, automated a bunch of it, and I went and I applied the same skill set that I had, and I helped generate I built an automated multi-million-dollar campaign. And the only difference was exactly what you said, the potential for the ROI. And that's when we talk about the marketing and all these things, a lot of people think, my business is different or my situation is different. And a lot of it's not. I mean, if you were a carpenter, or a plumber, like plumbing is plumbing, like setting up a shower is setting up a shower. If it has a fancier shower head, it has a fancier shower head. That's great. But still fundamentally, it's the same. And so what you said, again, that's a huge nugget that a lot of people hear. Hopefully someone listening to this call will take action on that and try and have the biggest impact on the world.
let me share you kind of a story here that I just I'm thinking of concocting it into a lesson. So I'm gonna test it on your call here on your market.
Sure.
You know, I went to see my daughter over the weekend. She is up in Northern California, I'm in Southern California, and I chose to drive. Partially because I've got so much material that I wanted to listen. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna use the time to drive. So use the drive time to listen. So on my way back, I'm driving late at night. There's nobody on the road, and man, I'm like flooring it. And I've got a high performance car. But the problem with high performance car is you don't even feel how fast you drive. The only thing that I'm kind of also in this thing, I'm looking at what's the biggest mileage I can get out of that car, like mileage in terms of how much gas it burns per mile, right? So I'm like in this toss-up thing, like I know if I floor it and I'm driving 100 plus miles an hour, which I know is illegal, so nobody turn me in, right? But man, I'm just like enjoying it, but I'm also looking at how much gas it takes, and it's like it takes twice the gas that if I drove at 75 miles per hour.
Right.
And at one point, I'm looking at all the dials on my dashboard, and it hit me. I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly what's going on in business. Which is you've got, this theory of constraints that people know. This is nothing new, but basically, you've got if you put together a triangle, and you realize that if you want to be at any one of the corners of the triangle, you've got three constraints. You can have things done inexpensively, or let's just say for the simplicity sake, you can have things done cheap, fast, and at the quality.
Right.
All right, so I replaced quality with energy. And in my drive, I was thinking, okay, so I can get home a lot faster and spend a lot of my energy driving, but it drives my cost because I'm going to burn more fuel.
Right.
Right, so I can never have all three. I can have things cheap and fast, but they won't be good. I can have them good and fast, but it won't be cheap.
Yep.
All right, and so you never have all three. So what dawned on me that the best for at least for service professionals, we are looking for customers who want to get things done faster with the least amount of energy invested into getting the result. And because of that, they understand that it's going to take an increased investment. And they're willing to pay more money to spend more energy and get somewhere faster. Now, oftentimes, we try to sell high-end solutions to people that are willing to take longer and are willing to put more of their own energy into this, but what they're unwilling to do is invest more. And then this is where we get into nickel and diming situation, where people are just going to beat us down on price. That's just not our market. Yep. They have already decided that the constraint they're unwilling to compromise on is the investment. What they're willing to do is compromise on how long it would take and how much of their own work they have to put in. So for many people, that's just not a good prospect for services. It's a great prospect for a product, yep, but not a good prospect for service.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. Theory of constraints. That's huge. There was a book called The Goal that I think first talked to, or maybe that was about bottleneck theory. Theory of constraints. I'm trying to grasp. Somebody sent me something on that, and I was just going to read on more. Do you have a good resource for that?
Actually, The Goal is a great book. I used to teach more about it as one of my partners. I have to look it up. But The Goal is a great book, and I think it's more of a it's put in a story as well. Mm-hmm. So it kind of allows people to absorb easily, the whole concept.
But it's just really important because I love the analogy because and it goes back again to the guy. He's making $50,000 a year. He's got a website problem, and he could get it fixed right away. But he's trying to live within the box that he's already in, as opposed to step outside that, and get to where he's going faster. So it's I love that. So we have cheap, time and quality, right? Or cost, time,
yep,
and quality. Those are your three, and you can't have it.
Yep.
I like that. That's a good mental image. So Adam, speaking of trying to get places, what are you doing? What are you excited about? Where are you trying to get these days?
Very good question. So, we talked about it again before we hit the broadcast button on this conversation. But we talked about how it's easy for entrepreneurial folks to be distracted, how most of us are very creative. right? And we just, we get excited more about what isn't than what is. So, I'm playing with this idea. I'm not actually playing with it. I'm really sharing it now with my followers and my students and clients. This idea of going platinum. And I'll tell you a little bit what it means in my business, but let's just talk about the concept of going platinum. Certainly comes from a music industry, right?
Right.
And when you think about, so today, at the time we're having this conversation, Taylor Swift is doing just amazing things, right? It's just like knocking it out of the park, popular. The songs are just being downloaded and sold like crazy, millions and millions and millions and millions of downloads. But when you think about it, what Taylor Swift doesn't do is she doesn't create a new song every week and goes to the same coffee house singing that new song in front of the same audience of 20 or 40 people. Because that's a surefire recipe to be broke. Instead, what she does, she once in a while creates maybe a few songs, or maybe even one song, and puts it on a single, and pushes the publishing button, and then takes that song to as many audiences and channels as she possibly can.
Right.
So in my case, one of my most popular programs is Attract Clients Like Crazy, and I thought, why is it that I sold thousands of those programs? It's not a cheap investment. It's a minimum of $1,000 investment program, right? Why is it that I've been so successful with it? And I realized that for number one, I've promoted it for a decade. I mean, that program existed for a decade. Number two, for a couple of years, I held a webinar every single week with a different promotional partner promoting that program. So I had the same webinar, the same song. I was just going platinum, taking it to a different channel every week. And so I think that most creatives, where they get confused is rather than channeling the creativity to find a better way to promote what they have, is they create something new. And again, give you a very practical example. I had a client who now runs a very successful multi-seven-figure business. When she came to me, she was selling 90-day programs that she was selling for $100. And there was lots of, so the thinking was, well, my audience is kind of broke, so I've got to sell them something that's cheap. And then, the next thinking is it's easier to sell to my existing clients, so every 90 days, which, by the way, many of them didn't even pay $97. They paid like 3 payments of steady $3.
No.
Right? So every 90 days, she goes, okay, well, they're off the cycle. I've got to create a new 90-day program to get them re-enlisted. So she now, for like a year or year and a half, created 4 or 5 or 6 of those different $97 programs. And in each one, she had 15, 18, 22 people, 18 people. It just kind of, I'm like, oh my God, what the hell are you doing?
Right.
And it's all this work to create this stuff. I'm like, okay, scratch that. Let's take the best out of the stuff that you had in all of those programs, turn it into one 6-month program, and let's sell it for $5,000. And there, it's like overnight success. First 2 weeks she put it out there, recreated the offer, turned it into a $5,000 offer, which she actually, first time, again, a little bit of confidence issues, so there was some discounts. Nevertheless, it was sold like at $4,000 or something. First time out of the gate, $48,000 a month. Next time out of the gate, $150,000 a month. What happened? It's the same thing. She didn't go back reinventing the program. She just got better at marketing the program. I have another student I just met with, who now is a dear friend. I just met with her on Monday, actually, and she told me she's doing her program 50th time. 50th time. I remember she created the program, being in one of my coaching programs. I kind of became a godfather to it because I actually named it and gave it the first structure to it. So I've said, I love successes like this because she has sold millions of dollars worth, impacted thousands of people through it. But I remember the day when she did it for the first time, broke to the point where she couldn't afford cat food for her cats. And, within 4 to 6 weeks made her first $7,000 with that program, kind of from the idea to the launch with no list, nothing, not even a shopping cart. I mean, everything was so jerry-rigged because she had no money to do it differently. And then I remember the day she came and just finished and said, what do I do next? And I don't remember what I said specifically. I only know from her stories. But supposedly I said to her, look, if you do anything else but repeat the same program, I'm going to kill you. Which is kind of my delicate way of saying, don't be stupid. Go back and repeat this. And look, you just created the promotions. You just got some partners on board. Give yourself 4 weeks and re-promote the same thing. Regroup and do it again.
Yep.
Man, she did. And she got triple the results, and then she said, what do I do next? I said, I think you know the answer.
Yep.
Give yourself 4 to 6 weeks and repeat the process.
Yep.
And, man, that's what she did. She put a clock in place where, 6 times a year she's doing the same program, and it's running largely on autopilot. She's got a very successful business, not a whole lot of stress. So this is kind of my long-winded answer to where I'm going. I've got a couple of programs, and all I'm working on is putting together better promotional material. So we've got, programs that really take entrepreneurs kind of from where they are to where they want to be, which is basically giving them better ways. So I'm focusing on teaching people 3 things. You've got to have a way to get consistent leads. Just last week I talked to 2 people that are pretty successful. They're already 6-figure businesses. And both of them, when I asked them, how do you get leads, they were kind of like, they had, 1 or 2 methods that were extremely unpredictable and inconsistent. And I'm like, you can't run business this way. You've got to have a predictable, consistent way of getting leads. That's the first thing we do with people in our programs. The second thing, they both came to me because they hit a ceiling. They were like, okay, I am at this, $150,000, $250,000, $300,000 level, and I've been there for now a year, 2 years, 3 years, and it seems like I can't break it. What gives? And I look at the delivery method, and the delivery method is broken because they have largely chained themselves to revenue that's dictated by the amount of time they put in the business. So we always look at how do we repackage the delivery or redesign the delivery so it's not limited or not bounded by the time. So it's largely either many-to-many or one-to-many or automated delivery. And many people have such a hard time really grasping that concept and envisioning the business is functioning differently. So, in my case, I support hundreds of clients every single month, getting them fantastic results. And my commitment to that program is 2 hours a week.
Right.
And people go like, well, how do you run a coaching business 2 hours a week having, hundreds of clients? It's like, that's because I've structured in such a way that their results and the value that they get is not measured by how much time I spend with them. Their result, their value is measured by the results they get, and that's what I get paid for, results, not time. And then the final thing, we talked about it when I mentioned the book on the art of selling anything, is really knowing how to be influential and persuasive, and knowing how to unveil it in front of a prospect, a pathway to make a decision to invest in themselves and get access to your solution. And there, I encourage our clients to just replay that last sentence. Unveil the path for a prospect to make a decision to invest in themselves and get access to your solutions. People never invest in me. They buy from me, but they don't invest in me on my programs.
Yep.
They invest in themselves.
Right.
I love Warren Buffett, who's made, $60 billion through investing, has a saying that the only investment that he values the most and is always guaranteed to give a payout is the investment in yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what people do. They invest in themselves to get better strategies, better knowledge, change their thinking. But they do it, they invest in themselves through getting access to my programs. Right? So I teach them how to become better persuasive. So we've got a couple of programs that do those things for clients, and all I'm focusing on is how do I widen the, if I have a single lane street leading to that program that only allows so much traffic before it gets congested. If I now build a 2-lane street that's better, I want to build, an 8-line, a 12-line massive freeway that just leads to that program.
Yeah, that's such a smart way to talk about it. I literally just had a conversation with a client today about a campaign that she's running, and the funny thing is she was kind of concerned about her conversion rate. I mean, this client, they're in a massive, like the market is huge. And I know we all want to niche down, but even her niche down niche, it's still huge. And she was concerned about her conversion rate. And I was like, look, if you want to make $100,000 next month, even if you're only making $1 net profit, after all your expenses and everything, you just need to get 100,000 people at $1. Like, that's it, like there's two ways to do it. You can increase your conversion or you can increase your traffic, but it's playing with those two. And I love your analogy because it's not go create something new. It's not go back and fix something. It's do what you've already done, do it better, and do it for more people. I think that's really, really, really profound. And you read my mind when you repeated that line. Can you just repeat it one more time? Because I was going to ask you, and you're like, Daryl, I'm going to say it again. And you literally stepped in the conversation in my head. Can you just one more time for our listeners?
Yeah, it's the ability to unveil the path for your potential ideal clients to invest in themselves to get access to your solutions.
That's awesome. Yeah, to unveil the path. I love that because if the promise is clear for someone, the price is irrelevant. If they can clearly see, like that's why the language used, unveiling that. If you can just show them what you do in a way that's believable. I mean, that's the biggest thing is as long as you can believe it, as long as there's proof, as long as I'm not being swindled, because there are people who will eat your lunch for nothing out in the world, then yeah, I love that. That's a great way to say it.
Yeah.
Adam,
see, when you have conversations with people, Daryl, it's like it's sales conversations. Folks get so timid about it, and I think it's because they perceive that when they ask for money, somehow they get the upper end, of the result.
Right.
And again, going back to this book, when we translate everything to profit, so in a sales situation, what will make you happier as a result is you're going to get some money out of that. But what you don't realize is what this is a critical shift in thinking, that what will make the prospect happier in the moment is to either gain something that's going to allow them to do something better or eliminate the problem. So let's say that, I'm having a conversation with a person who can't even bend over to have a conversation with their grandchild because of an agonizing back pain. Mm-hmm. And if I would say, look, for $1,000 in 3 sessions, I'm going to make the back pain completely gone. Mm-hmm. Gone, and I'm going to, in addition to that, give you solutions that will never make that back pain come back. Is it worth $1,000? To them, maybe when they've suffered with it chronically for a long time, it's like, oh my God, the best $1,000 right. I've ever spent. It gives me my quality of life back. It gives me the ability to be with my family, perform differently. And to you, what made you happier is the fact that you just got the $1,000 for your services. Yep. And I think that most people don't understand this. And the only thing we do in our sales conversations is, number one, present that opportunity in front of someone, and number two, give them the tools to make a decision. Is this $1,000 versus elimination of your back pain worth it? Is it something you want to do right now? Maybe you have a bigger problem, like you have a brain tumor. Well, in that case, screw your back pain. You've got to go and work on your brain tumor. That's a completely wrong solution. So in sales conversations, we basically help people make sure that they're making the right decision, so working on the right problem at the right time, and that the investment is the right level of investment for them. That's all we're doing. And you can't force them. You can't make a decision for them. You just kind of open the door and unveil the path.
Yep. So elegantly said. Very, Adam, this has been such an awesome call. I do want to respect your time, though. So I don't want to try and get more from you, but how do people get in touch with you? I mean, already I'm engaged. My brain's afire right now. If someone wants to reach out and talk to you, how do they get in touch?
Man, the best way is to go to themarketingmentors.com. That's THE marketingmentors.com.
And it's mentors plural, right? With an S on the end?
Correct.
Okay.
And don't just go in there. Go and whatever the current offer on the page is, go and sign up so that we can be in touch and send you, when I send articles and webinars and stuff like this, you can be involved and continue learning. But I always like to tell audiences that the best, we get as creatives, we get so many ideas out of everything. The best way is, you've just invested approximately 60 minutes listening to this. And the worst thing you can do is disengage and go right back to life and business as usual. The best thing you can do is take the next 15 minutes and debrief yourself. Like, what was your biggest takeaway? What's the one idea that you kind of go like, oh my God, this was so hot? And then ask yourself, what would I have to do to make this idea work for me? And you will realize that typically it's like 5 to 15 steps. And that's all it will take to make this idea start paying off for you. But implement that idea and make it work. So whatever it is, get better at sales conversations. Find one way to get leads that's predictable. Whatever is this one thing that stood out for you, go like, okay, let me go and do that and implement that. And if you don't, then engage with someone who can walk you through it and give you the tools and the structure and the know-how to make it work for you.
That's great. No, that is such great advice. So yes, please, everyone listen to this call, write down the biggest ideas, write down the steps to doing it, and even write down a list, what can you do and what can you give someone else to do for you? Yeah, I actually add that on the outro of all these podcasts. I do exactly that. I position people with some questions to think about the interview. So thank you for taking the initiative. And people listening, do that. Do it now, because the difference between the distance, the distance between your goals and where you are now is called action. And you just write it down, set the goal, break it down, let's get to work, and let's make some changes happen. So again, if you guys want to get in touch with Adam, it's the Marketing Mentors with an S on the end .com. And of course, if you want to look him up, his name is Adam Urbanski, Urbanski, my brother from another mother. And Adam, just thank you so much for joining me on the call today. Thank you for your time. I know it is valuable. I know you took time out of your day to share with us. You gave some awesome content today, and I just really, really respect and appreciate it. And thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me here. And Daryl, you are a fantastic interviewer. And I just want to call to our audiences, look, if you've enjoyed this, or any other podcast interview lesson that you've learned from Daryl in his program, dude, do that. You got to push the share button and tell 5 friends and bring them and say, hey, you've got to listen to this, because what will happen is, number one, you will ensure that Daryl continues doing this. But number 2, more importantly, you're going to transform your friends' lives. Your cool factor with your friends will go through the roof, because they'll take you go like, oh my gosh, this was such a great thing. Thanks for sharing. So don't be a hoarder. Don't be like, oh, I found a gold mine, I'm going to keep it to myself. The way to multiply your gold is go share it with your friends. So push that share button, whatever it is, send an email and tell 5 friends about it. Believe me, it will change their lives and it will change yours in the process as well. And Daryl, once again, thanks for having me here.
Thank you, Adam. You've reached the end of our interview. Now, first, let me thank you for listening. I appreciate and respect you more than you'll ever know. And now I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. First, what 3 lessons did you just learn? What 3 aha moments just jumped out at you? Second, what can you implement for yourself and your business in the next 24 hours? Third, what can you give to someone else to help you with, or give them to just do it for you? Whatever it is, remember, taking action is the secret sauce to results. Now, if you think this interview would be helpful for a friend, please give them a link to it. It'll help them and it'll help me too. I'd also like to invite you to help me find out more about the challenges you're facing, your dreams, your goals, and how I can help you overcome what's holding you back. We both do better when we know better, and your success is my success. So please reach out and interact. You can visit our website, bestbusinesscoach.ca for Canada or California, where I'm from and where I'm living. You're welcome to also try out one of our paid programs. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and pretty much every other social media channel you can think of. You should also subscribe to the podcast, and if you're enjoying them, please leave us a nice review. It really helps. That's all for now. Once again, thank you. Take care of yourself, and remember, the world needs the best business you can build. And I believe in you.